You're welcome back to Breakfast Central here on News Central Television. The presidency has strongly disputed claims made by African Development Bank President Akinwumi Adesina regarding Nigeria's economic growth since independence. Adesina, in a statement at the 20th anniversary of Chapel Hill Denham, claimed that Nigeria's GDP per capita in 1960 was 1,847 compared to $824 today. But the presidency, through the Special Adviser Bayo Onanuga, has fired back, calling these figures substantive lies. According to official records, Nigeria's GDP in 1960 was $4.2 billion with a per capita income of just $93, not even $100. The presidency argued that Nigeria's economic growth didn't take off until the oil boom of the 1970s, when GDP surged to $12.55 billion in 1970 and $164 billion in 1981. But how does this affect Nigeria's economic trajectory? We'll be breaking down these figures as we determine how much growth Nigeria's economy is currently witnessing. Join us this morning to discuss all of this is Public Affairs Analyst Kalu. Good morning, Mr. Kalu. Thank you very much. Join us on Breakfast Central.
How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Financial Analyst Kalu. Thank you so much for joining us. The first question will be, was it necessary to get the presidency's response? Was it necessary? What do you make of Mr. Adesina's statement?
So Mr. Adesina's statement was very, very simple. Nigeria's GDP has not grown to match its population. That's simply what he's saying. And the presidency's response is to say, well, that doesn't matter because we have better phones, better schools, and better universities. That misses the point.
Sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Kalu. We'll go on a quick break and try to sort out the technical issues, and then we'll be right back after this. Thank you.
Welcome back to Breakfast Central. We're looking at the statement by the president of the AfDB as well as the presidency's response looking at the nation's GDP. And this morning we're joined by Financial Affairs Analyst Kalu. Once again, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for joining us. I think our first thoughts with you, our first question to you, will be your thoughts on the president of the AfDB statement regarding our GDP, where we are today and how much better it was back then.
Yes, his statement was very simple. That's the AfDB president. The Nigeria's growth has not kept pace with population. That's essentially what he's saying. Population growth is about 3%. GDP has not kept pace. We used to be at 6, 7. Now we're doing about below 3%. So you see we've not kept pace. That's all he's saying. I think the response by the president is a bit defensive and misses the mark. They are talking about telecoms, roads, and health. Doesn't address the core point that Mr. Adesina is making, that Nigeria must grow faster than its population to achieve a real output growth for the nation, where we can create jobs and have economic development. So I think both sides are not saying the same thing, but what Mr. Adesina is saying is completely spot on and correct. The numbers might not be right, but the trend of what he's saying is correct.
Have any thoughts regarding what the SSA to the president did say, that he's speaking more like a presidential candidate or a politician? And what's your take on when financial analysts decide to speak on the current administration's challenges in running the economy, but yet get backlash that they are starting to sound political? How would this help the economy grow in your perspective?
It's unnecessarily defensive. Mr. Adesina is the chairman or is the CEO of the African Development Bank, right? They just approved for Nigeria $650 million every year for the next 5 years. So how are you sure he didn't make this argument to get this loan? And what he's saying is correct. Nigeria's GDP has not grown to match population. The response should not be, you are talking like a politician. The response should be, oh, okay, we hear you. This is what we're doing to grow the economy. We want to target $1 trillion in next 5 years, for instance. So you can come back to him with facts. But when you list your response with opinion, with innuendos, and you make everything political, it's a siege mentality. It doesn't bode well. You speak for the government of Nigeria, not a political party, not a person. If you get a response as such, respond back with facts. Tag the person responding to you or giving the issue and say, hey, we hear you, this is what we're doing, we want to get your support, Nigerians are behind us, and you move on. There's no point or there's no need to go there.
And maybe again we should ask if, using the GDP is still a useful metric for measuring the health of a country, especially one where we see that inequality and job employment unemployment is really high.
Well, there are many ways to measure the health of an economy. GDP is one of them, especially GDP per capita, which means the more people you are in a country, then the more you can tax those people, the more those people can produce output, jobs, create things that you can export, right? Nigeria was doing about 6-7% GDP growth in, say, 2015. Then it's crashed. Now we're below 3%. So we can't suddenly stop using GDP per capita because it's now gone down. There are other human development indexes that we can use, right? But the same index we've used in the past, we can continue to use them. Output is very, very important. Nigeria is targeting a $1 trillion figure for its GDP, the same GDP we're using. So I don't think there's anything wrong with using output to measure the economy. It just shows us Nigeria, with its huge population, should do more. We've got energy, we've got gas, we've got gold, we've got the diaspora. So much is expected from Nigeria. Benin is doing 6%. Senegal is doing 6%. Cote d'Ivoire is doing 6%. Ethiopia is doing 6%. They're all in Africa. So we should also do better than them because we are the giants of Africa.
Now, looking back at the 60s and 70s, especially after the oil boom, it looks like those were the golden years of Nigeria. Have we missed the train? Is it possible to have a GDP that matches up with population, looking at the enormous challenges we're facing as a country? And what do we need to do to get back on track and see if we can match up with the past? Because I mean, it's you look at other countries, Indonesia, Taiwan, Vietnam, for example. Their past was not so good, and then your future should be better than your past. That's how it is in most societies. So why do we always have to look back, throw back? Oh, I remember when I used to travel to the UK with 100 naira and things like that. We reminisce when we have a present and a future.
Yeah. Well, Nigeria got a lot of money. That's crude, the oil boom. We got a lot of income, but we didn't invest in infrastructure. If you go back to the videos and watch when Lagos was being built, the flyovers were built when there were no cars in Lagos. Have you seen, apart from Abuja, no other city in Nigeria has seen that level of infrastructure development in Nigeria. No other city, right? Look at the roads that we built in the 1970s under the National Development Plans. We haven't done them anymore. The power plants, if you take away the 10 power plants that were built under the NIPP, Nigeria would be in darkness today. So we have not invested in infrastructure that would promote growth. That's the problem. Today, we have no power in Nigeria. You can't grow without power. That's just a basic issue. There's no A1 road, 10-lane expressway going from the south of Nigeria to the north of Nigeria, or from the east of Nigeria to the west of Nigeria. At the roads in Lagos stop in Benin, the quote-unquote expressway, it's a 4-lane or 6-lane expressway. The rails, how are rails connected? They're designed for exports. There's no horizontal rail line in Nigeria. That's the problem. It's not the oil per se. It's that we got oil and we did not invest properly. We just got GSM when, So we haven't invested right. And can we get back to a high GDP? Of course. Start to invest in infrastructure, in education, so you grow a new economy apart from crude oil. It's just 10% of our economy, but it's giving us more than 89% of our foreign reserves. So you've got to grow the economy, develop new areas, and then you can then have that growth backed up with infrastructure and investment. You can't grow an economy without power. It's just as simple as that.
Well, I do not know if you've been able to lay your hands on the latest April 2025 poverty and equity brief from the World Bank. There it's mentioned that there's a 75.5%, a staggering 75.5% number of persons in the rural area that are below poverty line. Looking at what the World Bank has said and trying to juxtapose it with what we are hearing, that the economy is doing well. I don't know if you're also aware that the president also spoke a few hours ago.
Turned the corner.
Yes, he said the economy has turned the corner. And, his supporters are saying that the economy is doing fantastically well. How do we juxtapose these two? The World Bank warning of what's going to happen in the rural area, the presidency saying that the economy is doing fantastically well and it's about to start
maybe not
yielding,
fantastically.
results.
Fantastically might be pushing it.
Well, I'm going to say fantastic because I mean we do have reports of some of the followers who are saying that the economy is doing well. I mean, if something is doing
let's leave it at doing well.
Well and turning the corner.
Yeah.
but what's your take, though? Putting it together with the World Bank report and then what we're going through.
That's being positive. I just saw a tweet. Someone said he bought an egg, one single egg, for 300 naira. So if you divide 300 naira by 70,000, which is the minimum wage, how many eggs can a family buy? That's minimum wage in Nigeria. So the economy is not doing well. It can do well, but currently it's not doing well. Everything in Nigeria has gone up in prices, but wages have basically stayed flat. Real wages, when you index it to inflation. We rebased inflation, took away 10 points from inflation. Now inflation is going right back. Food is expensive, there's insecurity. Again, we don't have any power supply. So I would prefer to say we know what the problem is and we want to tackle it than saying we've turned the corner. We haven't turned any corner. There are no jobs in the economy. No Nigerian worker, none, can afford to buy a house in Nigeria, even with a loan. None. There's nobody's income that can afford to get a mortgage in Nigeria and buy a home, unless you're the CEO of something. So how do the kids in Nigeria have a hope in Nigeria that they're going to buy a house or they'll buy a car? How many folks in Nigeria buy brand new cars, not going to them by the company, but they go and buy a brand new car or brand new air conditioner or brand new fridge? So you look at the consumption in Nigeria, according to the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, as of 2022, was negative. So now we're not consuming. That's why you have sachets all over the place. There's half bread, half sachet now, half a loaf of bread that you can buy. So the reality is that Nigeria is not doing well. It can do better if we put our minds to it. But right now, I would say we're just being wishful with that thinking.
And, we often hear this positive macroeconomic data, which does not correspond to the lived reality of the average Nigerian. You just painted a picture of what the truth is. When we started the show this morning, I was complaining I hadn't bought noodles in a long time, and I bought yesterday, and the smallest size, I really shouted, it was 400 naira. I could not believe that what we used to buy for 35 naira is now 400 naira. But in previous interviews, we would hear supporters of the current administration saying that we should not judge the current reality with the pre-Tinubu administration. That instead, a better way to judge the yardstick of growth will be post the announcement of the removal of fuel subsidy and the floating of the naira to what we currently have. Is that a fair metric for comparison? And if we did that, with your perspective about where we currently are, would it be different?
Well, in all honesty, I think the president, Tinubu, was faced with a choice that he simply had just one option. He had to remove subsidies. He had to float the naira because Nigeria simply could not afford anything dollar-based or anything imported. So he was handed over a failed economy. The economy had failed completely to the point that we could not pay for anything until we printed naira. So we printed about 22 trillion naira. If you convert that to dollars, back then at that exchange rate, we printed the equivalent of 50 billion United States dollars, which is more than our foreign reserves. That's amazing. So that's what he was handed over. He had to take all those macro concessions, float the naira, remove subsidies to get income back to the government to spend. So on that point, I sympathize with him. The problem with them is that they haven't acted like a government that is under austerity. We're still borrowing, we're still spending, we're still buying private jets, we still have huge salaries for the National Assembly and ministers. We spend like we're in an oil boom We're not spending like oil price is now below 60 and our benchmark price is way above 70. That's the problem with Tinubu administration. On policy, they have it right, but on actions, on optics, they fail. And that's why you see people don't really gravitate to what they are saying, because people just don't see them acting out what they are saying. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure we have a lot of questions and a lot to dig in, but I want to thank you so much, Mr. Kalu, for joining us. Hopefully, you will afford us your time again sometime this week. I would like you to join us as we also analyze what the current minimum wage can do for Nigerians in different facets of life. Thank you so much for your time.
That would be interesting. Thank you, sure. I'll be there.
I'm sure it will.